Hey guys, welcome to 10-Minute English with May. And today we are going to have a thorough review on our 6 phrases. So before we jump into the review of 6 phrases, there are 2 terms I want to talk about. So number one, what is a modifier? A modifier is a word, a phrase, or a clause that describes another word. So it is adjective or adverb function. So for an adjective, we have level 1, level 2 adjective like beautiful, right? And of course, level 2 would be our phrase like prepositional phrase, a positive, or a participle phrase. So they modify our nouns or pronouns. And we also have our adverb, which is like level 1 quickly, or a prepositional phrase can also function as an adverb, right? And that's level 2. So the difference between level 1 and level 2 is simply that level 1 is a word, whereas level 2 is a group of words without subject verb. So let's take a look at our level 2 because that's the focus for today. So you can see here in the first example, people of Taiwan. Of Taiwan is a prepositional phrase that is modifying people, which is a noun, right? And remember the rule for prepositional phrase. We almost never use any punctuation between the noun and the prepositional phrase. All right, and the next example, sumac, a poisonous plant. In this case, we have a noun phrase, which is a positive that modifies another noun, sumac. And the third example, we have 2 here, 3 plays running simultaneously and a project proposed by Bob. If you remember, we have 2 kinds of participle, even though they're both adjective function. So running verb ing, this is present participle because it is active, whereas verb ed or irregular, that is past participle, or a lot of Taiwanese teachers would say pp, right? Okay, so and that is passive. All right, so that is modifier. For our second term, we have something called inserter commas. So later on, we will talk about 4 types of commas. But inserter commas, remember that they come in pairs and that they enclose our non-essential information. So a lot of times we would have non-essential, a positive, right? Like sumac, comma, a poisonous plant, comma, and then so on and so forth. And we can also have non-essential participle phrase. All right, and just keep in mind that they can be replaced by 2 dashes or parentheses, but they have to be used in pairs. So that means you cannot use a comma and a dash to enclose non-essential. All right. Now, let's jump into our very first lesson, the prepositional phrase. So that was from a long time ago. A prepositional phrase is adjective or adverb function. And the composition would be preposition, and we sometimes have modifier, which is adjective in the middle, and then followed by a noun or pronoun, which functions as the object of the preposition. And together, that makes our prepositional phrase. So for example, on that wooden table, on is preposition, that and wooden, they are modifiers, and table is the object of the preposition. And at home, at is the preposition, and home is the object of the preposition. All right, so some common prepositions include except, from, into, around, beyond, without, in, on, at, so on and so forth. And some prepositions that most people have seen, but they don't know that these are prepositions include concerning and according to. All right. And number two, we have a positive, which is noun or pronoun phrase that describes another noun. So that means it is adjective function. For example, John Atlitude, a local attorney, has donated his expertise to our business club. So we can see local attorney. This is a positive modifying John Atlitude. And this is non-essential because we have those inserter commas enclosing this positive. So if you're wondering why it's non-essential, it's because John Atlitude is a proper noun. It's a person and it's very specific. It's very clear who we are referring to. So that's why the positive is non-essential. All right. And our third phrase, something we haven't dedicated a whole lesson to talking about because it is not as important and it's not essential for students who are taking the SAT. So an absolute phrase, remember one thing, it is grammatically independent of the rest of the sentence, meaning that you can cross it out and you will still have a complete sentence. All right. It is not noun function. It is not adjective or adverb function. So it's not a modifier either. All right. And it is always separated by a comma because it is a separate part of the sentence. It doesn't affect the sentence in any way. And the composition of an absolute phrase is noun plus participle. So for example, you can see the bus having stopped. The bus is our noun and having stopped is our participle. But then even if I cross it out, right, you still have a complete sentence. The tourists filed out. That's your subject verb. All right, so same thing for number two. I shall do as I please, right? All things considered, all things is the noun and considered is our past participle. And you can see it's separated by a comma, and even if you cross it out, you still have a sentence. I shall do as I please. All right, and now let's move on to our verbals. So remember, we have three different verbals. So gerund, infinitive, and participle. So a gerund phrase is noun function, and that means it is the subject or object of the sentence. So being late all the time, being, that's our verb ing, is Joe's worst flaw. So being late all the time, that is a gerund phrase as subject, is our verb. In the second example, Bill hated driving his golf balls into the lake. So we know that Bill is subject, hated is verb, and our gerund phrase is our direct object. And of course, remember we can have a phrase within a phrase. So there's a prepositional phrase inside our gerund. And last but not least, she finally succeeded in opening the camera. So she is the subject, succeeded is the verb, but hey, we have a preposition here. So what is our gerund phrase doing? It is functioning as the object of the preposition. And together, this whole chunk of information makes up our prepositional phrase, and it is adverb function. All right, so moving on to our infinitive phrase, which can function as noun, adjective, or adverb. So remember, when it is a noun, it would pretty much be interchangeable with our gerund phrase, okay? And will function as the subject or object of the sentence. So for example, we decided to go for a long walk. In this case, it is noun function because we, subject, decided, transitive verb. So to go for a long walk, that is our infinitive phrase as object. And the second example, Ted has no plans except to watch, to plus verb, that's our infinitive, to watch Netflix. So we know that except is a preposition. So in this case, our infinitive phrase is functioning, pardon me, as object of the preposition, right? And the whole chunk would be our prepositional phrase. Millie left early to avoid the heavy traffic. And remember, when we are indicating purpose, that is adverb function. So it is the same as in order to. So you can try plugging in order to and see if it still works. Millie left early in order to avoid the heavy traffic. All right. And our last verbal and our last phrase is participle phrase. It is adjective function. And remember, we have present participle and past participle. So in the first example sentence, disappointed by his friend, disappointed, right? Because someone disappoints him, that is passive, and ed, that is past participle phrase, right? And remember, a participle phrase that comes at the beginning of the sentence has a comma, and it is always modifying the subject after the comma. Okay, so in this case, it is modifying Roger. The second example, the game proved challenging to all the players. So verb ing, we know that this is a present participle because it's the game that is challenging, right? And we are modifying the game. And our last example sentence, having spent a year abroad. This is again at the beginning of the sentence. So you can see that there is a comma, right? And it is modifying the subject after comma, which is he. And remember that having spent is a present participle, right? Because having ing, and it is the same as after spending. Okay? And that is it for our 6 phrases. I will see you next time. Bye-bye.